All right, my friends. So here we go. Okay, so today's Chumash, today we're beginning Parshas Tetzaveh, which last week we discussed at length the building of a lot of items in the Mishkan. If you remember, we discussed the way the Mishkan was built, the beams. We discussed the curtains that covered it. We discussed the menorah. We discussed the ark, the cover of the ark. We discussed the bread table. We discussed the altar on the outside. We discussed the curtain around the whole Mishkan. And today, this week's parsha, we're going to learn a lot about the Kohen's clothes. It's really going to go into great detail. But interestingly, we start off talking about the oil that was used, the specific oil that was used for the menorah and for the sacrifices that was needed. So they would also use oil to put inside the flour offerings. I believe that's what it was used for. They would put a little bit of oil also inside the flour offerings. And the oil for the menorah had to be a higher grade oil than the oil for the offering. So the menorah oil couldn't have any pieces of olives in there. It had to be just the first drop, actually. It was special olives that grew on top of the tree. And the first drop of oil that had no sediment inside of it would be the ones that were used for the menorah. So here we go. We're going to see inside of verse 20. Va'ata titzaves b'nei Yisrael. Hashem tells Moshe, you should command the Jewish people. V'yikchu eilecha. They should take to you. They should take to you. They should bring to Moses, because all the donations are coming. We learned about all the different donations that were given. We had a list of exactly 15 different donations that were given. There was gold, there was silver, there was copper, there was different kinds of wool, but also the olives for the menorah, the oil, also had to be donated by the Jewish people. So Hashem says, Moshe, tell the Jewish people that they shall bring to you, they should donate for Hashem, for the Beis Hamikdash, shemen zayisach, which means pure olive oil. They should donate to the temple pure olive oil. That's what the Jews should make on their list of donations. They should bring this pure olive oil. Kosis la'ma'or, the verse describes it. It should be crushed for lighting. So Rashi explains to us that, as I mentioned before, that it was the first drop, the word that says shemen zayis, the pure olive oil. Rashi says it was these olives that grew, ripened quickly on the top of the tree, and they were very good, juicy olives. They would squeeze them, and only the first drop of that olive would be used for the lighting of the menorah. It was a very pure kind of oil that was used for the menorah. Then they could then crush the olives, which it says kosis la'ma'or. They were able to, Rashi actually tells us that they were crushed and they could use that for the menachos, for the meal offerings, but for the menorah, only the first drop was what they could use in order to the to use that for the menorah. It had to be very pure, not a thick kind of what's it called, of an oil. It had to be a pure, very pure, good lit oil. The halis kosis lamar, it was crushed for lighting. So for the menorah, again, it was made in the special way, and it was made specifically to light up the menorah. Lahalis ner tamid, to kindle the lamps continuously. So Rashi brings an interesting discussion about the menorah. When was the menorah lit? And the problem is, this verse says that it's going to be continuously. If you look in the next verse, it's going to say from night until morning. So what does continuously mean? So there's two kinds of meanings of continuously, okay? There's two possible meanings of continuously. One meaning of continuously means that it has to be going the entire time. Cannot stop. Another continuously means it has to be that there were stopping times in it, but every day you must do it again and again for a few hours every single day. Where do we see these options in the Mishkan? Where do we see these different options? So he says, look, the challah that was brought in the which we learned about, the table, the bread table, it said that the challah had to be brought continuously. And over there, you know what it means continuously? Literally, the challah on the table had to sit there 24 hours a day. The challah had to sit on that table continuously. But then we have another kind of continuously, which said you had to bring the daily sacrifice twice a day, in the morning and the afternoon. And it didn't mean your whole day bringing a sacrifice. It just meant that it continuously, meaning consistently every single day. So what does the continuously of the menorah here, that we're bringing oil for the menorah, what does that mean? So Rashi tells us it's similar to the daily sacrifice, which means it doesn't have to be lit. The menorah doesn't have to be lit 24 hours a day. The menorah has to be lit every single day, not like Hanukkah, which we know we light our menorah 8 days during the year. Every single day, continuously in the verse here, means every single day you have to light the menorah. However, Rashi does bring, and the commentaries actually bring, Rashi doesn't bring them, but the commentaries bring that they would fill up, we'll see soon, a certain amount of oil. One of the candles, it was a miracle that would last, even though they only put in enough oil to last through the night. One of these, the southern lamp, I believe he says, would miraculously last all day and night. So in a sense, even though the mitzvah to light a menorah had to be lit a whole day, didn't have to put in that much oil, only have to put in enough oil for it to last the night. Hashem made a miracle that one of the lamps actually constantly, continuously lasted and the oil never went out. So we know that there was a miracle of Hanukkah that the oil lasted a crazy amount of time. But here, interestingly, he brings up that there was actually a daily miracle in the menorah, which according to some of the commentaries would actually last constantly. It was only put enough oil for the night period, but it ended up lasting in this one of the lamps that would last the entire 24 hours, according to some of the commentaries. Anyway, so look at verse 21. But oil moed, where should you light it? The menorah was lit in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the tent of meeting, and that we just learned about in last week's Torah portion. The menorah should be mechutz leparaychas, outside the partition. Remember, we learned it was one partition dividing the Holy of Holies, where the ark stood, and the other three pieces of furniture were, right? The menorah, the table, the bread table, and the altar. The small altar, which we didn't learn about yet. We'll learn about that this week's parsha, I believe. But the menorah should be on the outside of the partition, not the Holy of Holies, just the Holies. Asher al ha'edus, the partition that's blocking off the luchos, the testimony, the ark that was there with the tablets. Yarach oisei Aaron. Aaron should set it up, take the menorah and set it up, organize it right, light the menorah. Uvanov and his sons, mi'erev ad boker, from night until morning. So the menorah should be lit from at night. When it begins nighttime until morning, you should light the menorah. B'fnei Hashem, before God, chukas olam l'deresechem. There should be an everlasting statute for generations. There should be a menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple, in the tabernacle, and forever the kohen and his children should always light this menorah every single day of the year. The menorah should be lit from night until morning. The Eis B'nei Yisrael, from the Jewish people, which means that the oil and the stuff has to come, that we said before, the oil and the stuff comes from the Jewish people, and this is representing constantly, I believe one of the ideas of menorah is that the Shekhinah, that the godliness presence is there. This is a very important job in order to light the menorah. So we learned about the menorah and the functions of the menorah, but now we got to learn about the Kohen. So you need a Kohen in order to do the service. So the Chumash right now is going to jump right away into the Kohen. So who's the person that serves in the temple? So here we go, verse 1, where Hashem is commanding now to elevate a group of people called the Kohanim. Va'ata, verse 1. Hakre v'lecha, bring close to you as Aaron Achicha, your brother. God tells Moses, bring your brother Aaron close. There's Banav and his children. So we're now creating, here's coming about the Kohen family. V'toich b'nei Yisrael, from amidst the Jewish people. So you're going to single out, you're going to collect from among the Jewish people a unique group. You know, we have Yehuda, who's often in our class. I guess maybe this is one of the first times which we see the idea of the Kohens being selected, being singled out from among the Jewish people, right? L'chan li, to serve to me. So single them out. Aaron and his children, and he names all the children. There's 4 children that he had. Aaron, Nadav, and his son Nadav, and he had a son Avihu, and he had a son Elazar, and he had a son Isamar. So these 4 sons of Aaron will be singing it out because we just spoke. I guess we just spoke about the tabernacle. We spoke about the menorah. Who's going to be serving? Who's going to be doing all this work? We said every day it's a job. You got to go every day and light the menorah. Who's going to be the ones to do it? So he tells you, I need you to now allocate the Jewish people, the Kohen from among the Jewish people. Once you finish building the tabernacle, who's going to work in there? Who's going to do all this work? It's going to be Aaron. The Asisa. And here's almost going to say like the clothes make the man, literally. Like what's for this guy, this Kohen, right away jumps in. He says they have to have clothes. They got to have special Kohen clothes. Vasisa Bigdei Kodesh, you should make holy clothes for him. These people have to have a special, very unique set of clothing. For your brother Aaron, for honor and for glory. Right? Aaron needs these special clothes. For honor and for glory. I saw a note of the Rebbe because a lot of times in the classes people ask me why, what's the point of it? So the clothes that he wears is representing the Jewish people. It's representing finite and infinite together. Actually, a message that Ayal shared this morning, I shared it on the WhatsApp group, on our class WhatsApp group we have, that I'll just mention that Ayal was addressing Terry's question from last week, why the numbers were so significant in the Mishkan, and he shared an idea. He saw over Shabbos that we find the same thing by the Ark of Noach, that it was a miraculous place. It was a miracle that the Ark was able to hold all the animals, and it's a miracle here that all the Jews fit at certain times in the Beis Hamikdash. So this was a tremendous energy here of the infinite and finite coming together as a group. And that's why the dimensions were so specific, because you really needed a very unique building in order to be able to get in touch with this high level of godliness. So he's saying here, also the clothes of Aaron was l'chaved ulesifaris. L'chaved means honor and glory. So I guess the clothes would also make the man, meaning people would look at the Kohen and they would respect the Kohen because of it. The Kohen would be representing finite and infinite. The clothes were, look how right when he talks about the Kohen, he talks about the clothes. The clothes literally is making the man. And going to make them to be the Kohen. So it's amazing how the clothes are such significant, but we understand why, because the clothes plays a very big role in who he is and what his mission and what his job is. We're going to discuss very physical pattern clothes, but of course, each of them have very different meanings. Maybe some of them we'll be able to address and we'll be able to see some of the unique things about the clothes. But in order to do that, I need to show you some pictures, which I'll go to the WhatsApp group we have, where we share the some of the extras to the class that we don't share, that we have here. So, okay, so here is a picture of the Kohen, a very basic picture. This is the high priest, by the way. Okay, so I'm going to go into detail because I'm going to try to show you over the picture a lot of Rashi's commentaries that he brings about this picture. I'll hopefully be able to show you, talk about now and show you over this picture. So here's a number of the clothes that the Kohen Gadol wears. So as we just saw in the verse, God told Moses to dress Aaron. Aaron was the high priest. So the high priest wore different clothes than his sons who were regular priests. He wore extra clothes. I believe the high priest had 4 clothing and the regular priest had 4 clothing. So I believe here we're mentioning the unique 6 of the 8 clothings that only the high priest wears. And as we learn, we'll see what the Kohen wore, the Kohen Gadol wore, how the clothing was different. But again, keep in mind, we're discussing just the high priest, just the one person wore these very special clothings that we're going to talk about. So what sticks out right away is this breastplate that the high priest is wearing. We're not going to talk about that today, but that was probably the holiest item that he wore. I'll just mention it because it's so significant. It had 12 gemstones, you could see. Each of the gemstones had another name of the different tribes, because there were 12 tribes, and there was a very holy name of Hashem inside it that kind of was a battery power for it, the spiritual energy to it. And they would ask Hashem questions. Literally, you could ask God questions, and God would respond through the breastplate. The breastplate had all the 22 letters of the alphabet in there. And by the letters lighting up, we would know Hashem's response to us. So obviously that's the holy side, and we're not discussing that today. We're going to discuss other parts that the Kohen Gadol wore. But let's just go over the clothing that the Torah mentions in the thing, and then we're going to speak about one of those clothing. So what clothing we're talking about today? So number one, the thing on his chest was called the choshen. The choshen is called the breastplate in English. We're not talking about that today, but just know number one is the breastplate. The choshen sat, we're going to get a closer look soon on this. It had a hook at the end of it. It had this ring, which attached to a beautiful golden chain, which attached to a shoulder strap, which had a gem that we're going to learn about today, which had a shoulder pad, like a shoulder strap, which this shoulder strap in the back of it attached to the robe, literally like a robe. So today, Rashi goes into detail trying to describe it, but I mean, or not a robe, I'm sorry, an apron, literally like an apron. It's just kind of like a backwards apron. We would have the apron the other way, but this is actually like a backwards apron. Okay, hang on one second. this is like a backwards apron. So the apron went along, imagine an apron. The apron went along the back. Now the apron, as our aprons do, had a belt, okay? Usually, again, the belt would be tied around the back, but here the belt, you see, goes around and around. I'm not sure which starting point it started from. From learning Rashi's commentary today, it looks like the belt kind of went from the back of the person towards the front. But anyway, there was a belt. The belt was where we would make an apron today, right? The belt is not under your armpits, Rashi says, because that's sweaty. That would be improper. Although the apron went up to the back, the belt was at elbow level. So you notice in this beautiful apron, which is going to be a gorgeous apron, it's at elbow level, this belt, and then hanging down all the way down with a long apron. A long apron went all the way down to his feet, and that was called the ephod. The ephod apron that was a beautiful, gorgeous top clothing to the Kohen, and that would attach to have straps going down from the shoulder straps to the choshen. And then on the bottom of the choshen, notice there is another strap that goes from the bottom of the breastplate to the apron again, but where the belt of the apron is, pulling it down. So because you don't want it to flap, you don't want the choshen to flap back and forth. So that is where the choshen attached itself to the apron. Okay, so I hope we're getting a pretty clear picture here. You have the choshen. The choshen has two rings on top of it with two beautiful golden chains attached to a shoulder strap that had two gorgeous gems, which we'll learn about those gems that were on his shoulder today. We'll learn about that attached, went backwards to behind his back. It was the width of his back, went down to create a belt that was at the elbow height, to create this beautiful robe going all the way down, this beautiful apron going all the way down to his feet, is how the Kohen looked. So that is clothes number 2. So I already mentioned 2 of the clothes. We had the choshen, the breastplate, and now we have the apron, which we'll call an apron. Rashi says the women would wear this while horseback riding, whatever this, or priests would wear this. The women would wear this while horseback riding. They had this unique kind of a apron that they wore when they were horseback riding. We know in the kitchen today, I believe, women wear the similar kind. People who work in the kitchen, women wear this kind of a apron. Now, under this apron was a robe, okay? Was the outer, it was called the me'il. It was also a beautiful robe, the exterior robe that the Kohen wore. So he wore this gorgeous, I believe, colorful robe on top of him. And the apron that sat on that robe, which we're just discussing, was kind of a belt. You see, it was like a big part of it was the belt that he tied around himself on top of his robe. So he had a me'ila robe. On top of the robe, he had this apron with a belt that would tighten up the robe that he was wearing. So now we have 3 clothes, okay? We have the breastplate, we have the apron, and we have the robe. Now, under the robe, which you can't see, was another piece of clothing, was a white inner clothing, okay? Under the robe was a white inner clothing that also had a belt that you don't see in this picture, because this big white belt that you don't see, because the high priest wore a robe and a apron and a breastplate on top of that inner robe that he had inside of him. Maybe you want to call it a shirt. So he wore a short under the robe. The regular Kohen did not have all this extra stuff that the whole high Kohen had, the extra robe and the apron and the breastplate. So when you would look at him, you would see only under the white robe with a big belt. But under this outer belt of the apron, there was another belt inside under the robe that covered him, which you see which we'll see when we get to the regular Kohen. So we already have. So I mentioned just now another 2 pieces of clothing. I mentioned an inner belt, an inner white belt that went around the Kohen. By the way, in davening, people ask me all the time why we wear a gartel, right? Or why I wear that Hasidim, wear that sash. You'll see it's very interesting that the Kohen also is very important to have belts. He actually, Kohen Gadol had 2 belts on him. The high priest and the regular priest had 1 belt, which we're going to see. But now we learned about 2 more clothing, the inner belt that we don't see here, and also the inner clothing. So I mentioned, I believe, a total of 5 items. And the 6th item, which I didn't mention yet, is the hat. Of course, you notice it's very unique, large, big, high, fat hat, that is the hat that the Kohen Gadol would wear. So 6 clothing I mentioned. Let me work from the beginning to the end. The breastplate, the apron, the outer robe, okay? Then I mentioned there was an inner shirt. On top of that inner shirt was another belt, and the hat that makes up a total of 6 items, which we're going to discuss today. I'm going to show you another 2 pictures just to make it a little bit easier. Hopefully pictures make it easier. Here is a zoom in on, you see the breastplate has the names of the 12 tribes. Then you'll see there's rings on top of the breastplate with beautiful golden chains connecting it to the shoulder strap. And you'll see there's 2 gems on each of the shoulder pads. On each of those gems had 6 of the 12 tribes on each shoulder. So the Kohen Gadol walking around, we're going to learn that's going to say, Rashi is going to say that Hashem, they want it always a name should be in front of God, so Hashem should remember them and take care of them, obviously, as a prayer for them. So that's a little bit of a close-up to the top of the breastplate as it connects to the apron that we're discussing today. Okay, one more picture. I'm going to show you a gold picture, a color picture, sorry. You'll notice I didn't mention all the items that the Kohen Gadol had. Another item is the forehead. He has a golden plate that engraved in it the words Kodesh LaHashem, means holy unto God, and he would always wear that thing. His tefillin somehow fit inside there. He always wears tefillin all day, but that would be a 7th item that we're mentioning. I believe also pants will be the 8th item. If I remember correctly, the pants will be the 8th item. Now, if you'll notice his feet, there are bells and pomegranates. Again, we're not discussing it today, but just to give you all exactly, this hung down from the outer robe. Over here, they're making the robe blue. You'll see under that robe, by the bells, there's a white shirt, which we want to call the inner robe, which went behind his outer robe. And you'll see, this is the regular Kohen on our left. He has a hat. I don't know, I think the hats will maybe see a little bit different. Just to give you a picture, he has, so the hat is 1, the inner robe, which his outer robe, because he's only wearing 1 robe, is similar to the Kohen's inner robe. He has a belt. I don't know, over here they're making it colorful. I'm not sure, maybe we'll see what that is. And he's wearing also a pair of pants, like long underwear, I guess. That is the 4 garments of the regular Kohen. The high priest, we add to the regular Kohen. He has the outer robe. He has the apron. He has the breastplate, and he also has the Kodesh LaHashem, the golden plate on his head, and his hat's a little bit different. They both have hats, but his hat is a little bit different. Hopefully you guys are with me. And now we'll go in. We'll see this inside the Chumash today, get a viewing from the actual verses in the Torah and see how Hashem describes it to Moshe in the Torah. Okay, Va'ata. So we said verse 2, make holy clothes for your brother Aaron, and by putting them on, it will make him holy, and they'll be for honor and glory. They'll be absolutely gorgeous clothes. Anybody sees them, they will be for honor and glory for Hashem. Verse 3, and speak to all the wise-hearted people. That Hashem had given them God-given talent, spirit of wisdom in order to create these really sophisticated, complicated sewing and weaving and all these things, right? That Hashem has really given them the ability to really be able to do this stuff, right? Really talented people. But also as big day Aaron, and they shall be the ones, the artists, to make the clothes of Aaron. And by him wearing the clothes, it will make him holy. So as I said, the clothes make the man, literally. The clothes will, Aaron's garments to sanctify him, so the clothes will make him holy, in order that he could serve Hashem, literally bringing him the clothes so that he can serve and bring him into being the status of the Kohen Gadol. So by putting on the clothes, that will take him to the next step to be the fascinating status of the high priest, of what the high priest will be. Verse 4, and these are the clothes. I'm going to give you the overview of 6 of the clothes that the Kohen Gadol would wear, he says. Asher Yasu, that these artists should make, right? Number 1, it should be the Choshen. The Choshen is, as I told you, that's the breastplate. The ephod, and there should be the robe, which we're going to get into detail today. But first, he's giving us the overview of the 6. Umeil, and the ephod, the robe, is covering up on top of the me'il, which is the outer robe, a robe. Uksoines tashbetz, and he should also wear, over here he says, a tunic. of checkered work. Sinus tashbeit. So that is referring to the shirt. Some want to call it the shirt. So that's the inner shirt behind the robe, right? What this long, let's just call it the inner robe, this inner white robe. It was checkered. It was checkered, meaning, like I guess those shirts, when you order shirts online, you could choose a design. Some have just plain. You could also order like a checkered kind of design on it. He says like kind of, it almost looks like it has, like you could put diamonds and like little tiny diamonds in the shirt. It has like a space like to fill holes and gaps. So depending on the design, that the shirt has this unique kind of design that is kind of like checkered. So that is the fourth item we learned. The fifth item, mitznefes. Mitznefes is the hat, right? Mitznefes is the domed hat. Not a regular hat, it's a domed hat. This big hat the Kohen Gadol would wear, the high priest would wear. Va'avneit, and also a belt. The belt would go on the inner robe, on the inner shirt. Also, big day kodesh, and you should make these holy clothes. LaAaron, you should make this very holy clothes to Aaron, Achicha, your brother Aaron, Levanov, and to his children, Lachan Eli, to be Kohanim to me. So where will it come from? Rashi explains. It's going to come from the holy clothes. Why are they holy? Because people donated it. What made the whole clothes holy? Because they came from donations of people to Hashem. So they became holy by the donations to God. And now the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is wearing them, and he's going to become the high priest. So the regular priests are going to wear the red Kohanim will wear them, and now they're going to become holy and special by wearing these very special clothes that was donated by the Jewish people. Okay, so we have the list of the clothes. So now it's just going to give you the details. I'm going to start going through it. Today we're going to learn about the robe. The heim, fascinating thing. We learned in the earlier classes that there was a certain kind of threads that they used. You remember the last classes? What were they? We learned about 4 threads, okay? And remember, we always said they were always times 6 to make them thicker threads. We had 3 kinds of wool, and we said that they were blue, they were purple, and they were crimson. 3 colors, that's what we said. Blue, purple, and crimson. Then we had a 4th thread, which we used, and that was linen, right? So for a lot of the stuff, the curtains and different stuff we used, we had 3 woolen colors of thread, blue, purple, and crimson. And we had a 4th color with a 4th item, which was linen, and they mixed those together. And we said, even though we're not allowed to mix wool and linen together, but the Kohanim, as we'll see right now, wore wool and linen together. It was allowed in the Torah, in the temple. But here he's going to say something fascinating. They actually added in a 4th material, not like for the building of the Mishkan. They added in gold. So Rashi tells us it's fascinating. How they do that? They took they took a piece of gold, made a very, very thin plate of gold, cut little slivers like out of the gold. I guess that you could do that. You can kind of make it into a thread, and then they would weave through each of the 4 threads the 3 kinds of wool, color wool, blue, purple, and crimson, and the linen. They would take 1 sliver of gold and mix it with each of the 4 separate colors. So they would take the blue wool, again, it has to be times 6 threads of blue wool, take a sliver of gold and make 1 thread out of it. Then they would go on to the purple wool, make 6 threads of purple wool, add a piece of gold. The same thing, 6 threads of crimson wool, add a piece of wool. Same thing with linen, make 6 threads of linen, add a sliver of gold, then take all them together and twine them into 1 very thick kind of a thread of everything together. So if you remember, we learned last time, without the gold, we had 24. Each thick thread was made out of 24 colors, 24 different threads. But now, because it was 4 times 6, but now it's 5 times 6, so therefore it's going to be 28. So it's going to be 28 because we're adding in 4 extra gold threads into the package of making this 1 thick thread that we're going to sew with. So when you want to make the Kohen Gadol's clothing, this is verse 5. Yikhu es hazohav, take a thread of gold, vesat cheles, and match to 1 thread to every cheles blue wool, vesa argamon, and one thing of gold to every 6 color of purple of wool, and telash shani is the crimson wool, 6 threads of telash shani to 1 gold, vesa sheish, and also the linen, and that's you're going to make. This is the exact recipe that Torah tells us how to make the clothes for the beautiful clothes of the Kohen Gadol will wear. Then we went along, verse 6. Va'asu as ephod, and you should make the ephod, okay, the apron. We're going to just call it the apron. Zav, gold, cheles, and blue wool, va'argamon, and purple wool, v'telashani, and crimson wool, the sheish mashzar, and and the linen, Maaseh Choshev, and the method of sewing. We learned there were three methods of sewing in the Mishkan. One was weaving, one was embroidery, and one was crochet. So he's going to say today, this has to be made weaving. And Rashi says, what does weaving do? What is helping when you weave? When you weave, I don't know how to sew well, but when you weave, he says you can make two images on two sides that are different than each other. So the front design doesn't have to match the back design. So he's telling you, when you make the apron, for this gorgeous apron for the kohen out of these 5 different colors, to 5 different threads and stuff like that, I want you to make it weaved so that the front and the back of the apron don't have the same pattern, but they can make 2 completely different patterns in a way of weaving them. Very interesting. Okay, moving right along. Verse number 7. Okay. Steak seifais chayvris. You should have 2 shoulder straps coming out from the apron, right? Because we know I'm calling it an apron now, but till now the Torah only described something that's going downwards, but the thing should have 2 straps coming over the shoulder, which is going to hang on. That's like we have like in the modern aprons today. Yeloi, it should have ashtei kitzaisav on the 2 ends, creating what we know today as an apron. You should have these 2 shoulder things coming, 2 shoulder straps coming up on it. The chubar, and you should sew them onto the apron. So it doesn't have to, when you weave the apron, you don't have to weave the shoulder straps into the weaving of the apron. It's fine. Weave the shoulder straps separately, then take some thread, have someone who knows how to sew, whatever, one of the people there, and then weave the 2 shoulder straps separately, and then with a needle and thread, attach the shoulder straps to the rest of the garment of the apron that you're making over there, okay? Verse number 7. Let's go on to verse number 8. But the belt, no. The belt has to be weaved into the rest of the apron. Cheshev, afudasai, and the belt, which is going to make this gorgeous, right? The belt, I guess, added a lot of beauty to the apron here. This gorgeous belt coming out of it with the same colors that they would tie around the kohen. It seems like a belt was really big quality. You know, a big part of the davening, a big part of the significance was this belt here that they wrapped the kohen around in. So the belt that came out of there, which added to the beauty of this clothing, all of that is on the apron. It should be the same material and woven together with the rest of the apron. Zahav, it should be gold, chelis and bargamon shani, shesh mazar, together with the 3 colors, the gold with the blue, purple, crimson wool, and the linen, all together. It should be weaved in together with the rest of the things. So the belt, a very significant part of this robe, of this apron, that's going to sit on top of the robe and really make the kohen look put together, right? Clothes make the man. This is all very important here. Verse number 9. We're not done yet. Add a gorgeous piece, important, significant piece to this apron. You're going to take 2 shoham stones, very expensive diamond gems, big diamond gems that you're going to take now, and you're going to add that into the clothing. And you're going to, what are you going to do with these 2 gemstones? You're going to engrave. First time we're learning about this idea in our Mishkan, in the tabernacle, you're going to engrave the names of the sons of Israel, the 12 tribes, into these 2 stones. Shisha mishmoisam 11 achas. 6, verse 10. Names of the 12 tribes should be on one of the stones. The remaining 6 should be on the second stone. And you should do it in order of their birth. However they're born. What order should the 12 tribes be in these stones? So he says, Rashi tells you, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, in the order of they were born and their age. Put on one stone, and the second stone had the other 12 tribes. Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zvulun, Yosef, and Binyamin should be in the other side. Now, there's different ways to spell the names. Sometimes it could have a yud, sometimes not, depending where in the Torah. How do I spell it? So he says, Binyamin should be spelled the full way, extra yud. Make sure it has all the yuds it needs. Why? Because there's a goal here. We need to have exactly 25 letters on every one of the stones. So each stone had to have exactly 25 letters. That was the requirement for the stones. And in order to get the exact 25 letters, you'll have to spell the names based on exactly how the stones are. So I want engraved 2 gorgeous big gemstones that will have the names of the Jewish people engraved in these gorgeous gemstones, the 12 tribes, in these gorgeous gemstones that you're making. So what do you do with these stones? you should, the way people engrave, the engravers, the way they make seals, right? That's how you know how you make seals with engraved names inside of it. That's how I want these stones to be. Al Shmois B'nai Yisrael. And Musabais Mishpatzei Zav, you should create golden enclosures, right? Golden settings to place these gemstones, these big gemstones, into a gold setting. Make these two gold settings, Tasa Oisim, which they're going to sit in these two gold settings. So it's getting more and more beautiful. So now we have two beautiful stones with the names of the Jewish people, with gold settings that they're placed inside of. And then now you will attach this. You made these two beautiful pieces of jewelry, stones with the names in gold setting. You will place the stones attach it now to the shoulder straps of the apron. Avri is the current of Bnei Yisrael. Should be stones of remembrance for the Jewish people. Vanasa Aaron and Aaron will carry their names L'fnei Hashem before God. The high priest will always be walking around with the names of the Jewish people right on his shoulders. L'fnei Hashem must take with the zakar as a remembrance on his shoulders for Hashem for all the days of the Jewish people. So Hashem will see the names. Rashi says, and he'll remember the greatness of the 12 tribes, the forefathers, I guess, of the Jewish people will always be remembered in front of Hashem, and that is the end of today's Chumash. We'll get to Tanya in a minute, but just to go back to the picture we have one more time, because now that we learned about it, you'll notice in the picture, the Kohen Gadol is wearing what we learned about today. At least we spoke about the head covering, which we didn't get into detail yet. We spoke about the white. You see the white sleeve on the side. That is the inner shirt that he wore. Then we spoke about the outer apron, the outer robe that he wore, which is the blue thing. You see the blue color over here. Spoke about the breastplate quickly, but the main thing we spent and focused time on was the apron. So you'll notice the apron in the back. It's beautiful, different colors. I guess they're trying to maybe to make the blue, the purple, whatever, different colors inside of it. I'm not sure where the yellow comes from, but they have this apron that goes all the way down to the back of his feet. Then the two shoulder straps, which we said does not need to be woven in. It's separately sewed into the apron. Then moving around to the front, the shoulder straps came over the side. And they had these two beautiful gems that connected to the breastplate, which we'll learn about in more detail how exactly they got to the breastplate. We'll learn about when we learn about the breastplate. Just go back to maybe share one or two. That's a little bit closer up. We didn't learn about the gold chains yet that connected to the breastplate. That we'll learn about when we learn about the breastplate. But for now, we learned about, you could notice even in this picture, the two gemstones with the names of the tribes, 6 tribes, and each of the stones coming out of the shoulder strap of the apron that the Kohen Gadol wore. Any questions or comments on today's class on the apron of the Kohen Gadol? Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Question.
Yes, Gershon.
If you go to verse 21 of chapter 27, so the second verse that we learned
about, I don't know, the oil of the menorah. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of it, I don't know if I'm right or I might be wrong on this. I just wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
From when it usually says an everlasting statutes for their generations for the children of Israel.
Yes.
Does that usually mean that we still have to do it even regardless of what's going on in the, in the time, a day or year?
So you're asking a good question. Very good question. You're asking similar questions the way you ask the other time. Let me add some clarity to this whole thing. We can't really do this today. It's not really an option today. We're impure. We don't have. It's not really possible to do these things. This has to be handled with a very high level of holiness and purity. In other words, anyone that's been to a cemetery, to a funeral, becomes impure. All Kohanes have been to a parent's or some relatives that they're allowed to. A Kohen's allowed to go to a parent's funeral. They're impure. They're not allowed to serve in the temple until they were sprinkled by the ashes of a red heifer, which we don't have today. So all these things with the temple are put on hold until Mashiach comes. It's not possible to do it today.
But like, for example, when it says keep Shabbos, and it's going to be like an everlasting covenant between me and the Jewish people, we still have to do that, even though we're impure. And then the tzitzis, it's an everlasting covenant for all your generations. So, I mean, I look at it as, even though we're impure, lighting a menorah in our own kind of
Yeah, but Hashem, what I'm saying is Hashem destroyed the temple. Hashem destroyed the Beis Hamikdash.
So we have to stop Shabbos?
No, Shabbos is not based on Hashem didn't destroy Shabbos. Hashem didn't take away Shabbos from us. All the mitzvahs regarding the temple were taken away from us. I guess you could say, like, if Hashem makes someone have a baby on Shabbos and they have to violate the Shabbos to go have the baby, then they're not violating the Shabbos. It's from Hashem. But
he didn't say that make this everlasting covenant after every little, like, I don't know, so far this is the first time I'm picking that up.
I just want to say, I'm seeing here in the note that what is everlasting, just the notes, just as I'm reading here, is that the oil has to be obtained from the Jewish people is what's everlasting. The oil has to be everlasting, but
so it's not the lighting of the menorah, it's just the
it's not the lighting of the menorah. The everlasting covenant is that the oil has to come from the Jewish people, is how he's reading it here. I guess.
Are we still producing this oil?
It says Mi'es b'nei Yisrael. It says Chukas Eilim Dereisim. It's an everlasting statute from the children of Israel. What does that mean? From the children of Israel. The everlasting statute is that the oil has to come from the children of Israel. Just to answer your specific question, but you have to realize as a whole that when the temple was destroyed and we were chased out of Israel, we lost all the sacrifices and all that thing was not an option anymore at that point in time. Once you're only allowed to bring sacrifices in the temple was taken from us. We weren't allowed to go on the Temple Mount.
But that like contradicts everything, like everlasting until I destroy the temple. You know what I mean? Like it's not everlasting.
It doesn't say until. It's an everlasting statute that we need to bring oil. First of all, need to bring oil to Hashem, but at some point Hashem took it away from us.
I wonder what that even represents of making oil.
Oh, you're asking a very interesting question. There's the last publication that the Rebbe published, the last discourse. The Rebbe had a stroke on Chav Zayin Adar so we're in the middle of the month of Adar now, right? On the 27th day of this month that we're in now, the Rebbe had a stroke. Right before the Rebbe had a stroke, the Rebbe gave out a discourse exactly on your question, on this verse that we're learning, the exactly verse that we started off the portion about the oil, bringing the oil to the Kohen, was the last discourse that the Rebbe gave out for us to learn right before he had the stroke, which is the last time he spoke to us and handed something to us. And eventually the Rebbe, until the passing of the Rebbe 2 years later, this is really the last thing was the discourse on this. And the Rebbe discusses at length the oil, the significance of the oil, and that, like for example, one of the things he mentions is that the olive is crushed. When does the olive bring out its best oil? When it's crushed. So from the exile and the crush that we're going through, it brings out the greatest oil, the greatest purity of the Jewish people are brought out when they're going through a challenging time. So there's a tremendous significance in it. It's actually the last Hasidic discourse, talk of the printed talk of the Rebbe is exactly on the topic that you're asking. Maybe Tuesday night we'll get into some detail about it. But yes, the Rebbe is basically talking about, because they're bringing oil to Moses. He says, Moses, bring oil to you. The Rebbe is talking about the relationship between Moses and the Jewish people, and there's tremendous significance behind that idea. There definitely is. But I want you to realize, I'm saying, if the idea is new to you, it might be like confusing, but we don't do today a lot of the stuff that are offering carbon sacrifices related, because since the Romans came and they destroyed the temple and they got rid of the Mizbech, the altar, and these things, you're not allowed to bring sacrifices anywhere else besides there. It was taken away from us. It's interesting you're asking the question, because in our day and age, we actually kind of conquered Jerusalem back, but we never fully took back the Temple Mount. That is still given to the Jordanians to oversee and so on. So it's a good question today, but this has not been done by the Jewish people for 2,000 years since the temple has been destroyed. It hasn't even been an option. Today, you're saying it might be an option for us to go back into it, and it seems to the Rebbe and other people, as I mentioned, that we're impure. We're going to wait for Mashiach to come, and that's when we're going to be able to put everything back in the systems. Hopefully, it'll be very soon that we'll get back into this idea. It's a good question, but I believe that's part of the answer that I'm sharing with you now. Any other questions or comments on this topic? Great question, Gershon. Great point. Any other questions or comments that we have before we move on to today's Tanya? No? Everybody good? Okay. We'll leave it over there. Let's move on to let's move on